Honest employee feedback is the worst, at least if you're an organization or leadership team that don't really want to change. Hey, I'm Maike Imberg, Workplace Culture and Inclusion Consultant, and on this channel, we're going to talk real about work, about management, leadership, and culture, about all these other topics that affect employees across the globe every single day in their workplace. In doing so, we're going to review Glassdoor feedback from employees, again, across the world, across different industries, markets, different sectors as well. And what we're going to find are some real common themes. In our first episode, I picked 2 reviews. One from roughly a year ago with a 1-star rating. The other one is a 2-star rating from just a couple of months ago. And we're talking about a global energy company. Let's dive in. So the very first review here has the headline shady. That already says a lot. They did not recommend the workplace. They didn't really care to tick anything around the CEO approval or to tell us about the business outlook. What they did say, though, as a pro, was that the people were the only good thing. Now, that's very common. Whenever I speak to employees from my network or when I have conversations at networking events, it's a very common thing that people kind of say, well, my immediate team or those individuals that might be working across different departments, my work buddies, basically, the ones that I have a really good relationship with, that I even have friendships with, those are commonly the people that keep people like that for as long as the job as this person basically stayed. Yeah, because if we look at the cons, again, the first one listed is shady practices. So this word shady, let's unpack that a little bit. Often what employees mean when they say shady, they mean real lack of transparency, a lack of clarity in expectations, in a potential vision and mission. Often we kind of ask ourselves the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? How does this actually contribute to the bigger picture? Shadiness is also often related to how a manager might communicate with their team members individually, but also with a wider team. And how transparent the leadership is around progress, around goals, around what's going on in the business that affects everybody. The second piece here is constant changing of goalposts. That is not helpful. Constantly changing objectives and goals. And in the worst case scenario, putting those objectives on the employees and team members instead of developing them in collaboration, that does not get people up in the morning, and I think what that actually does is wasting a lot of money. Because if you say to your team members, oh, today it's this goal, actually in a month's time we need to reshift, we need something else. Oh, all of a sudden something else big happened in the organization and now we need to shift the gear again on our objectives. That doesn't help, because guess what? People might want to get promoted. They might want to get that pay rise. So if you make it very difficult for them to stay on track with the objectives that have been agreed with them, that's not good. The last bits here are around behaviors in the management. So undermining, gaslighting, backstabbing management. Not worth the impact on mental health, this person says. And right, they are. Oh my God, all of these are very toxic, very exclusive behaviors. What does undermining look like? It can be being shut down in a meeting. All of a sudden you feel like, well, if you as my manager shut me down, well, I'm not going to speak up again. I'm not going to bring my ideas. Like, you know what? I'm going to do the bare minimum, because why wouldn't I? Undermining can also be a manager just not acknowledging the skills that you actually bring to the team. And of course, gaslighting and backstabbing, it's in the words, right? That shows that there are a lot of issues in this workplace going on in certain areas. And of course, it's absolutely not worth the impact on mental health. If anything, mental health is so commonly and regularly affected by the workplaces that we're in and by the culture that we're in. And we really see that because a lot of employees, they're so exhausted by the end of the week. The weekend is no longer 2 days where we have all the energy in the world and we can do whatever we feel like. The weekend has more commonly become the 2 days of rest, the 2 days of recharging. And that's not healthy and that's not sustainable. The second review today is a 2-star review without a heading. They didn't bother to either recommend or give CEO approval or comment on the business outlook. What they did say, though, for pros, and again, this was a couple of weeks ago, fun environment, good people to work. So that kind of echoes what the previous employee feedback from over a year ago also said. But again, the cons, no structure and nepotism at its finest. So even though there's been a year between both of these employee reviews on Glassdoor, has a lot changed though? Maybe not, right? Because again, nepotism, favoritism, that's not great to experience in the workplace. What it does to me as an employee, I'm less inclined to put in effort, work. Yeah, I might do the bare minimum, but don't ever ask me to do anything more than that, because if there's nepotism going on, which is quite obvious to everybody, then people are not going to feel the energy to up in their game and make sure that the team objectives are met. Now, in terms of the responses from the organizations, the review last year got quite a quick response from the organization, but diving into that response, it's a very generic, we're so sorry to hear that, we don't want anyone to feel like that. So common, and definitely reflects most of their responses to negative feedback. The more recent review, however, didn't even get a response anymore. So the organization stopped listening, didn't want to make the time to personally respond to any of the feedback on Glassdoor. And even worse, they're asking people to come in after people gave their reviews on Glassdoor. That just means you don't have a good exit process. That just means that your culture is bad, because otherwise people wouldn't be leaving. How can you as an employee spot this kind of culture in your team, in your organization? Firstly, are you clear on your objectives and goals? Have they been developed by you or in collaboration with you? Or were you just given objectives and goals that you need to work towards? Has there been clarity on your development, on moving into a different direction, moving up, or maybe moving sideways into a different type of skill, into a different type of team? Because if that hasn't happened, then there's no clarity, right? And you might actually be feeling like this as well, constant changing of objectives. The other thing in terms of management practices is, does your manager role model good behaviors? Do they treat everybody equal? In a team meeting, are they aware that not everybody immediately raises their hand when a question comes up? Do they invite other people to speak up as well? That are important reflective questions to ask yourself. If you're a manager, however, again, there are definitely things, practical things that you can do. Question your own bias, question your own assumptions. Are you actually treating everybody fair and equal? Does everybody get the same amount of time from you? But also, do you recognize when people have different needs? Are you actively asking for feedback on what could be better in the team? Here's a very simple way of doing that. Start, stop, and keep. Just ask your team, and you can do so via a Microsoft form, anonymous even. Maybe share one or two things that you think we could start to be a more efficient team. Maybe suggest one or two things of current practices that we should keep because they're already quite good. Give us one or two examples of things that we maybe should be stopping, yeah? And just make very clear, what is this about? This is about having an efficient, inclusive team that has real clarity on their objective. So, thank you for joining on the first episode. I hope it was a helpful insight in what's going on. For our next review, we're going to pick a different sector. So make sure you follow, you subscribe, and you join the conversation. And I will see you in episode 2 when we pick out more negative reviews on Glassdoor.